Hello, hello. Welcome to Self-Love Sunday Chat. Let's give Facebook a moment and let me check on my phone whether I'm actually live and everything is working as it should. And of course, we need to give everybody a moment to find me. It always takes a bit of time. All right, so I think I pinned the video to the top of the page, so it should be easier for you to find it. So if you're here, just say hi in the comments and let me know that everything is working. Morning, morning, Sharon. Good to see you here. Brilliant. Okay, so we have a really interesting topic today, yes, and I think this is something that many of us struggle with to a bigger or smaller extent, but like difficult conversations, yes, are never easy, and sometimes for some of us they are really challenging. So, but before we like dive deeper into the topic, just to announcements. So the first one, as I mentioned last week, we're going to have like a free longer workshop at the beginning of July. It'll be probably 2 or 2.5 hours, so like a proper chunk of time so that we can really do some nice work together. And it will be about detoxing your relationships. So all about, the steps for us sensitive, emotional, empathetic women, what we can do to feel really respected and seen and loved in our relationships. So if you're interested in this, you might send me a PM and a private message, and I will put you on the list already. I should have like the sign up page ready this week, so you can also keep an eye on your inbox, and I'll send all the info. Hi, Ola. Good to see you here. Wow, brilliant you're with us. Hi, Sylvia. Hi, Serena. Right. So, so that's one thing, and another thing is, and this is my, another dream coming true, and I'm really excited about it. We are going to have an offline self-love retreat in autumn, probably the end of September or beginning of October. For those of you who are in the inner circle, you know Wendy Byard. She was with us as a guest expert once, and she will help with the organizing, and we are just in the process of finding the venue. So also, if you are interested in joining us for this, let me know, because it'll be a small group. It'll be max 15 women. You know me, I like to start baby steps. And anyway, we are going to do some breathing on the retreat for sure. So even with Wendy's assistance, I probably can't have a bigger group than 15 women. So please don't wait till the last moment, because the places are really limited. So and let me know in the comments how it sounds. I know, like in the inner circle, I know like a lot of ladies are ready to join us, and some also are even ready to fly from Canada to be with us. So wow, it will be amazing. And also, if you are thinking of joining us, you might start collecting little pieces of, yarn or fabric, because we will surely do a little weaving as part of the process. You know, my passion for weaving. So let me know how it sounds. I'm really excited about that. It's been, we've been meeting for so long in this online space. It will be so lovely to be in one room. Yes, Sharon. Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. All right. So, difficult conversations. Let's face the topic. All right. So before I want to tell you what I want to tell you today is like five things, five rules that you can stick to make these conversations much easier. But before we dive into them, just a few words about the foundation, because for any difficult conversations, but for any relationship, yes, if you want to have thriving, healthy relationships, not only your love relationships, but all of your relationships, like family relationships, like friends, like work relationships, yes, you need to have like a strong foundation in you. So there are like three things that are most important here. The first one is your self-worth. Yes, just really knowing, feeling it deeply in your gut that you are worthy, that you deserve respect, kindness, and love. And then that your needs, wants, desires are as important as wants, needs, and desires of other people. This is the starting point always. Because if you go into this, I don't really matter, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, it will always, go out sideways when you try to communicate with others. So that's one thing. Emotional resilience or emotional strength. So it is your ability to be okay with your own emotions and with the emotions of other people. So it's a state when you no longer feel anxious, frightened, uncomfortable, or overpowered by your own emotions or by the emotions or reactions of people you interact with. And this is something that we kind of learn and practice in the inner circle all the time. And the third thing, self-love. So once you know that you deserve, love, kindness, and respect, uh, you also need to treat yourself like in that way, right? So um, it's essential, in order to have like thriving relationships with others. You need to have a thriving relationship with yourself, right? So this is where we need to start always, and this is what like this space that we share together is all about, to help you build this foundation. Hi, Jen. Good to see you here. Okay, brilliant. So let's dive in. Five things that, and of course, like I could tell you about 15, but I think these five are most important. If you stick to them, it'll be much easier for you to make all of your conversations, but especially those challenging, where there is a conflict, when there is misunderstanding, when there is disagreement, to make them work. So let me know first of all, what's the most difficult thing for you in terms of difficult conversations. Yes, what is it that you struggle with, and we'll see whether we can kind of address this um, during this talk. So I'll wait for your comments, because there's always a bit of delay, so it takes a bit of time before I can see something. Not feeling heard. Yes, that's a big one. And that's very much connected with the foundations as well. Interviews, yes. So this is a totally different context as well. Yeah, but I think these rules are kind of valid across different circumstances and situations. Okay, so let's start with the first one. So the first one is something that seems quite obvious, but we often forget about it, especially in our like personal conversations. So it is to know what you want and why you want it, because quite often we start the conversation not even sure what our stance is. Yes, we kind of think that we will figure it out once we start talking. So we focus too much on other person. Yes, we want to know what the other person thinks. We want to know what the other person's reaction is. But we forgot that in order to be really clear in any interaction, we need to be deeply in touch with what we want, with what we think, and with what we feel. And what is our goal for this conversation, like in the first place? Yes, why do we want to talk? Um, because if we don't know that, if we are like unclear from the start, we set ourselves up for a failure. So this goal, if we don't have like a clear goal for a conversation, and that's a tricky part, yes, because once you start checking in with yourself what my goal is, you might discover very interesting things. Quite often, and let me know if this sounds familiar, quite often we start a conversation just to prove our point, to prove that we are right, or to make ourselves feel better. So, and then, it can't really go well. If we have difficult topics, if we have like, all these situations of things we don't agree about, or we have some concerns about something that we want to talk to our partner, our friend, our family member about, yes, then there is only one goal for this conversation that is kind of setting you up for a success, and this is to find a solution. Yes, if you start talking because you want to make feel yourself feel better, but also if you start talking to achieve a certain result, to make the other person do something, feel something even uh, on your own agenda, then it's just it's not going to work. Yes, and there will be like a lot of upheaval and emotions in the process usually. So we need to start with knowing what we want and with setting the goal to find a solution, and only then we can communicate clearly. Because what happens quite often, especially for us, if we are like highly sensitive, if we are emotional, if we are empathetic, is that we don't feel like we have the right to feel the way we feel. And what happens then, we try to communicate in very indirect ways. Sometimes we do not communicate at all because we feel that our emotions, our feelings, our concerns are a burden to others, right? And or that they are not important or valid enough to talk about them at all. So we kind of minimize everything, we bury everything in our bellies, and we do not say anything, right? What's the result? So I'm sure, like all of you know, what happens, later on, after a few days, after a few weeks, after a few months, after a few years, even sometimes, yes, we kind of lose it completely. Or we kind of disconnect completely. There are like two ways here, yes. Some of them is just it all bursts. It's like a pressure cooker, yes. The lid is not able to hold it anymore, and pew, it all like burst out. We kind of close it even more, and we totally disconnect and isolate. And quite often it ends up, in some kind of like either mental disorder, like depression, or even physical sickness. So that's one thing. Another thing is indirect communication. Yes, when we drop hints, but we do not say openly what we want or what we mean. And we hope the other person will guess what we want or what we need. And we really hold it against them if they don't, or if they guess incorrectly. So just give me yes in the comments if, if this is something that you sometimes do. I think we all do this like from time to time. So it's just our human nature as well. And we'll come back to human nature later. But this is something that that blocks open and effective communication very often, that we do not, yes, of course, that we do not say clearly. We just give clues, we just give hints, and then we give cues, yes, that we are upset or angry or frustrated or disappointed, yes. Like, your husband is watching like a football match, and you will walk in between him and the TV set a few times, sighing, eye rolling, or making even some sarcastic remarks, but not saying actually what you mean. So that's not open communication. And then also we use communication to control people. So, and we do this sometimes, very subconsciously. So it's also like a matter of paying attention, right? So we try to, we communicate just to make the other person do something, just to get our way in a way, to do something, agree to something. Sometimes we even want the other person to feel a certain way, yes? So we start with this hidden agenda, and then the other person can feel it, and of course they become defensive quite quickly. And the last thing that I want to say about indirect communication is that we use communication to protect ourselves as well. So if we do not feel safe, yes, within a relationship, we might use like a lot of defense mechanisms, like lying, like becoming very secretive, but also like making jokes at somebody's expense, yes, or this sarcastic ways of communicating, yes. And then you communicate not to find a solution to a problem, but you communicate to keep yourself safe. Also, not a great agenda for a successful conversation. And these, when we talk about these ways of communicating that are not very healthy, or what also comes to mind, there was a very extensive research done a long time ago. It was like in the 70s, so I was a baby at the time. So anyway, it was done by John Gottman, and he was researching the reasons or the traits in the relationships that led to happy marriage or to a divorce. And then he found out 4 things that kind of have the power to break any relationship. And I even started to call them later the 4 horses of the apocalypse. And they are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. So, yeah, just remember these 4. They are not building relationships, like never, ever. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. How does that sound? I think we quite often have a lot of these 4 in running through our relationships, and if we do, sometimes we get used to that, and that becomes our normal way of interacting within a relationship, and we don't even realize how detrimental it is, how it kills the trust and the safety. Stonewalling is kind of like the building a wall, yes, between you and the other person. So it can be like through silent treatment, for example, through not really talking about what you need or what you want, and like protecting yourself as well, so that there is like a real disconnect. Okay, Being disappointed when in relationship men behave different way than I expected. Yeah, okay. And other than that's your part, yes? Then if we have certain expectation, then we do not give the other person the right to be and to behave the way they are. So that's kind of recipe of our disaster from start, yes. So we often, yeah, and we did, like in the inner circle, we had like a beautiful practice where we learned how to work with these expectations, yes, and how to give the other person the right to be the way this person is, and of course, like setting boundaries as well. Okay, let's move on. We spent a lot of time on this one, but that's a very important one. So number 2, take responsibility for your own emotions, and only for your own emotions, right? So if you tend to take responsibility for the other person's emotions, if you find it difficult to understand where you end and the other person starts, or where your emotions end and the other person's emotions start, or if you are really deeply affected by other people's emotions, then it means there is some inner work to be done here, right? We just had last Thursday a beautiful call, a beautiful life circle in the inner circle about codependency, and this is a pattern that kind of ruins relationships. So and it's something that you can work on, that you can cure and recover from. So if you discover, yes, that you are focused more on the other person, that you kind of uh, set the other person as the priority in the terms that you want to fulfill their needs first, and then you blame them for you yourself not being happy or fulfilled, then there is something to do, a bit of work around, right? Because, and then also, if you are deeply uncomfortable or anxious about how other people will respond in conversation, yes, then you won't be able to express yourself clearly and easily and effectively, of course, because what starts then, if you are uncomfortable with how the other person might respond, you start to beat around the bush, yes, you start walk on eggshells, you start to carefully choose your words, trying to make this message more digestible for the other person, sometimes like losing the essence of what you want to say. And the result is, yes, this discomfort, this uneasiness is showing up in the tone of your voice, in your choice of words, in your body posture, quite often, in your face expressions as well, and the other person can feel it, and the other person can have a very strong reaction to it, yes, and then you just repeat the old cycles of drama, or even violence in some relationships. So the first thing, yes, always, is to have skills and know how to manage your own emotions, and take responsibility for them, but also how to be okay. And this is very much about setting emotional boundaries, how to be okay, centered and grounded in yourself, no matter how the other person responds to whatever you're saying. This is like a life-changing skill. So let me know if this is something that is challenging for you, and which part, whether it's more difficult, to be okay and at peace with your own emotions, or whether it is more difficult kind of have this clear boundary between you and another person's emotional reactions. Which one? So let's say that your own emotions is one, and setting a boundary, an emotional boundary from the other person's emotions is number two. So is it one or two that that causes more problems for you right now? Yeah, and that Isa, that's true. That this is like sometimes a lot of men, yes, have this defense mechanism. It's kind of, it seems that it's more common among men than women, and that we have like a very strong reaction towards it. So again, it all starts, yes, with us being okay, even if we are getting stonewalled. Uh, because like if you are trying to ask what's whether everything's okay, and there is frustration, there is any kind of emotional upset in you, then the other person can feel it, even if it's very, very subtle. So, stonewalling in itself is a self protection technique. Yes. So the other person does it for a reason. And sometimes having compassion and understanding what's really going on and trying to have a conversation when there is no stonewalling, and we'll come back to this in a moment, trying to have a conversation when you are connected, when everything is okay, and learning how to be okay with some stonewalling until you get a chance to resolve it. So I'm not saying that like stonewalling is something that you should accept and be okay with, but as a part of the process, yes, that's very helpful. Okay, so we have both one and two. Brilliant. Yes, brilliant. And that's Isa. Yes, very much. Yes, about being okay with your own emotions first before you even start to do some relationship work. Because if it feels like you're going to burst, there's so much that you're going to burst, then he can feel it. He can feel it, like, because your nervous system is communicating it. It doesn't have to be even in words. All right, brilliant. So that's number two. Number three, and that's a game changer and a life changer. And it needs to be done like in every relationship, I believe. And that's declaring no violence zone. That's declaring no drama zone. Like drama and violence, like it kills relationships, yes? And we won't get into this deeply today, but I just want to mention how important it is. It's saying no to being rude, to being disrespectful, to blaming, to criticizing, uh, both setting boundary from the other person, but also very much recognizing this in yourself as well, and learning how to communicate with kindness and respect, no matter what. And that's a big thing. That sounds obvious, and that sounds you know easy even, but it never is, because drama and even violence, it always starts when we get kind of hijacked for a crazy roller coaster rides, yes, by our emotions, by our automatic patterns, by our like automatic behaviors, our reactions. So once you're in the middle of this ride, it seems that you have no control over what's happening. It seems like, the impulses, the automatic reactions are stronger than your will. And the emotions are so intense, yes, just as Isa said, that it feels like you burst if you don't express them. And so the most sensible thing is to not get on the roller coaster, yes, in the first place. Because once you're like speeding down in your wagon, there is not much you can do. It's very difficult to stop the whole thing and to get off. And you always know, yes, you always know it's this feeling, yes, this urge inside that building up. And quite often we are well able to recognize this, yes, in your partner, that this urge, you know, to go for a crazy ride starts to build up. And it is a time to step back. It is always a time to step back. Because like if we allow ourselves to go into it, then where the toxic ways of communication start. And then there is no like effective communication at all. So, you know, drama, these toxic arguments that happen, you know, recurrently, sometimes in a relationship, not to mention violence, yes, they are very addictive as well. So this is something to remember, yes, that we get addicted to this rush of adrenaline that they bring. And sometimes it's we know, we recognize how detrimental they are for ourselves, for the relationship as well, and we still find it very difficult to step back, to take time out, to stop talking when the conversation is spiraling into like a total toxic upheaval. This is the time to stop, and this is the time to stop for you, no matter whether this is happening to you or whether this is happening to your partner. It's just a clear and consistent no. I refuse to talk if the situation looks like that. And that's difficult, of course, because then you have to face your emotions on your own. So we're coming back to the foundations. Yes, you need to have good, really good emotional skills to be able to do that. But once you do, things become so much easier, and even the long-standing like patterns in a relationship can be changed and fixed. Okay, let's look. Isa says, when I say I angry, but I has nothing to do with him. He gets angry, doesn't believe it. He says, I'm not stable. Yes. So now we're going into, you know, all these little games that are happening in a relationship. And of course, anger like is a very difficult emotion to manage. And for me, and like for plenty of my clients, it is like two things: managing your own emotions, managing your own anger, and then being able to use the I statements. Yes, the best way to communicate clearly. I feel this when you do this. Could you please do something else? And it's not that it works like magic if the other person is not used to it, if the other person is really wounded, hurt, with a lot of trauma, a lot of defense mechanisms. Yes, that's kind of, we can't fix that. Sometimes we can do in a relationship like 50% is ours. But if the other person doesn't want to work with us, yes, there's only as far as we can get. So it's also not taking all on board either. I think that is important. And I think that that number 4 is very helpful as well in situations like this. So number 4 is to build the connection first. So it's very much about timing, it's very much about attention, but it's also about, you know, building intimacy and closeness in a relationship. And then at moments when everything is okay, at moments when you feel safe both of you feel safe, both of you feel emotionally, yes, okay, or at a good place, then having a conversation, starting a conversation when you are connected, not when you are in huge emotions or totally disconnected, when you are tired, when the other person is busy with something. This is timing is really important. My mom used to say, like, do not talk to your man when he's hungry. So that's just an example, yes, but it's true for like all the genders, and it's true for like far beyond the situation when somebody is hungry. Yeah, when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, when there's like a lot of emotions, when you're stressed about something, when there is no time, when someone is busy or preoccupied with something else, that's not a time to talk. And this quite often comes back to the situation uh, when we want to talk just because we are not able to cope with our own stuff, and we need to talk now. Yes, we need to talk to make ourselves feel better. uh, that doesn't work, unfortunately. And especially, in all these situations when you have all of these recurrent patterns, that arguments or discussions, yes, get very emotional and very unhealthy. And then, I remember like my ex-husband was just running for his life the moment I said we need to talk. Do you remember your teenage, like, can you have you seen like a teenage girl or a boy rolling their eyes when they see like we need to talk? Yeah, that's not easy. So it's very important to find a timing that is good for both of you to agree, yes, that you are going to have a conversation, and what this is going to be about. It's just the starting point is much easier if you can get the other person's agreement, yes. If you can get their like engagement in what you want to do, and then also getting their attention. And that's a tricky thing too as well. So with kids, yes, we often say that to get down to their eye level, or you would say to a little kid, yes, please look at me, before you're going to tell them what you want. Yes, because you need to have their attention first. It's like the same with adults. But sometimes, if we do not feel very safe in a relationship, we will try to talk when we don't have the full attention. And I used to do it for a very long time, talking to my husband when he was looking at the screen on his computer. And I didn't realize this at the time, yes, that it was my nervous system trying to protect me. So what I was trying to do, yes, it was like to feel safer. It was just easier for me when the contact was not like full on, yes, when I didn't have to face him. But so that was one level of what's going on. And then on another level, I really felt like ignored or dismissed or not respected, because there was a lack of eye contact. So just giving you this example to for you to see how complex your nervous system is, and how things might be happening on different levels. And then that's why getting support, that's why working with a group or working one-on-one with a therapist helps so much, because it's difficult to see it on your own. So I had like two things going on. On one way, I subconsciously but very intentionally tried not to have too much eye contact. On the other hand, I felt very upset about not having the eye contact. So the frustration was growing, and of course, like the tension was growing, and there was no way to communicate clearly. And again, understanding how your nervous system works plays a huge, huge role in all of this. So we had a beautiful life circle a while ago around understanding, yes, what's really going on in your nervous system. And just to give you one little thing here, or a reminder, if you've been on the on this call, that your nervous system can be either in the connection mode or in the protection mode. Once it's in the protection mode, it can't really connect fully. So the moment you don't feel safe, you go into this fight, flight, freeze, appease response, and no clear communication is really possible. Okay, I can't see names here on the comments again. Okay. So that's number 4, and the last one, and I left it for the end, but I think it's probably the most important thing of all, and this is to practice compassion and to practice self-compassion. And I think this in itself can really change and dissolve a lot of very, very toxic patterns. So, like, I hope you don't mind, Isa, if I use like your example with stonewalling and with asking if everything is okay and getting the response that like yes, but getting this wall again. If you can find compassion in the middle of this, and even more, if you can communicate compassion instead of communicate your upset or your difficult emotions, then sometimes something can really release and it becomes easier. But it needs to be like a really honest and genuine compassion. So again, we need to be okay with our emotions first. Yes, we need to have a lot of self-compassion, and then even at moments when somebody is behaving in a toxic way towards us, and again, not about not setting boundary, not about allowing things that are toxic to happen, but at the same time having compassion for all of us, just because we are all human. That can shift a lot on a very deep, like energetic level in the dynamic of the relationship. So that's worth remembering. Now, all of these like toxic behaviors, automatic reactions, emotions that are like overwhelming, all of this has very deep roots. Yes, so it's all coming back to our childhood, to all the experiences we had through our life. So it's not your fault that you react this way. It's not your partner's fault that they react that way. And of course, it is yours and it is theirs responsibility to manage this, to kind of grow, to change, to transform all that. But the fact that these difficult things are there is no one's fault, and it's worth to remember that like none of us wants to be hurtful or unfair or mean towards others, and yet we all are from time to time, right? And this is the more hurt, the more wounded, the more in pain we are, the less safe we feel in our relationships, and there is the bigger need or urge to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves. And sometimes the easiest or the learned strategy to protect yourself is to attack. So no matter what's going on, all this is just a reaction to your inner wounds, to your inner pain, to your inner hurt. And it's good to remember this, because we are only human, or maybe like not only, but we are human. Yes, we are here in this body now, and being here in this body means being imperfect, means making mistakes, failing, and also being vulnerable. It means being vulnerable on many different levels. And we develop through our lives some coping mechanisms how to manage this vulnerability, and some of them are quite toxic, and that's all there is to it. So compassion is not finding excuses. Compassion is not justifying unacceptable behavior. Yes, it's not allowing unacceptable behavior to happen, but it's saying no with kindness. It's saying no with respect, and it's saying no with love. And the moment you are able to do this, both towards yourself and towards other person, something shifts on a much deeper level. And sometimes it is something very, very simple. It's like, Christine Neff teaches, it's just putting a hand on your heart and saying, can I be kind to myself through all this? Can I be kind to myself through this upset, through this anger, through this need to defend myself? And then if you're up for it, can you be kind to the other person? Can you be kind to the other person as they go through their patterns and automatic reactions and emotions? This is a life-changing skills. And of course, it needs to have this foundation in place. Okay, the other says I had expectations from men in relationships, for example, things going very slow for me, and I wanted to improve situation. Yeah, of course, and that's a normal thing that we disagree about certain things in our relationships. Yes, so there is something is going too slow for you and too quick for them. Something is too much for you and too little for them. It's just a normal thing. And using all the 5 things that we said, yes, so using the knowing what you want and what your goal is, taking responsibility for your emotions and only your own, no violence, no drama, building connection first, and practicing compassion and self-compassion, you can talk about these things you don't agree about. But this conversation, yes, is to find a solution that is good for both of you, not getting your way, right? Relationships are very much finding a path that is good for both of you. So a path, like people often say, compromise. Yeah, that's a topic for another story. I don't think compromise is the best word, the best strategy, but quite often you can find a path. There is your path, there is somebody else's path, but there are also many paths that are acceptable and okay for both of you. So it's always looking for them. Brilliant. So I hope that helps. Let me know which of these 5 is most helpful for you. So is it like knowing what you want? Is it taking responsibility for your emotions and not taking responsibility for the other for the other person's emotions? No violence, no drama, building connection first before you start to talk, and then compassion and self-compassion. Which one rings the bell? This applies to all relationships. Yes, this applies to all relationships. Yeah. There isn't much difference really once you learn how to ground, center, and stand in your power, and communicate from this the safety and certainness and groundedness in yourself, and communicate in clear and open way. It will work like across all areas of your life. 2 and 3. Okay, brilliant. And solution, not getting in your way, finding a path. What a beautiful, helpful approach. Compassion and self-compassion. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. So just a reminder, let me know. Just drop me a private message, drop me an email if you're interested in the online workshop at the beginning of July. And if you're interested in our offline, in person, face to face, and heart to heart, and hug to hug self love retreat. It'll be over the weekend, sometime in autumn. I'll have more details this week, so I'll keep you posted. So thanks a million. Thank you for being here with us, and have a beautiful, beautiful Sunday. Thanks, and bye for now. Bye.